Last October, I booked a little Airbnb just south of Bamberg in the middle of nowhere for a personal retreat. Because you see, I was feeling burned out. I was experiencing physical, mental, and spiritual exhaustion, as well as anxiety, because I had hit this very dry as the Sahara moment in my sermon writing, and I was worried, very worried, about the toll that the pandemic has taken here at Jubilee Circle, not just in terms of money and attendance, but in the lack of connection and engagement that we were really building up right before COVID hit. So I told myself I needed a break. I needed a little me time to regroup, do some meditation, do some writing, do some thinking, do a whole lot of nothing. Well, that was the idea anyway. The reality of the situation was a little bit different. I stayed in what was basically a two-car garage with a small bedroom that sort of reminded me of a monastery chamber. I mean, just square with a bed, and that was about it. There was a big bathroom with a shower and this wide open area with the garage doors and a small kitchenette off to the side and a little refrigerator, all tucked behind this huge tractor that was parked in one of the garage spots. Now, I saw pictures of this place before I rented it, so I wasn't all that shocked. And I actually found the arrangement, after a while, to be a little bit quaint. I mean, spending a few days fixing coffee next to a tractor, that could be fun, right? Of course, there are other things in garages as well, right? Mainly bugs, all sorts of bugs, including a plethora of spiders, and this one palmetto bug that every night would traverse the wall every night at about the same time, about 9 o'clock, this palmetto bug would start at the bottom in the corner and make his way all the way up the wall and disappear into some sort of crevice. And about 10 or 15 minutes later, he'd come back. He'd just walk back down the wall. I figured he had some business. He was taking care of business. I don't know what it was. But since I was on retreat, I talked to him. I made a deal that if he stayed on the wall, he was safe. But if he got on the bed, or heaven forbid, on me, all bets were off. So
Name him?
I didn't name him, but no.
Okay, Charlie.
Charlie,
Don't
okay.
fault me.
So Charlie the palmetto bug. Hopefully Charlie is still living in good health out on this farm. And the farm itself was quite beautiful. The woman who owns it, her name is Ashley. She has these 4 horses, 2 regular-sized, beautiful horses, 2 miniatures. And she spent most of her day working her farm, tending to the horses, which meant she was in and out of my quarters most of the day, which made silence and contemplation pretty much out of the question. I didn't mind the company, though. I mean, she was nicer than the bugs, right? But the other thing I learned on my retreat, and this is very important, this I think is probably the takeaway from the whole thing, is that I can no longer eat sugar. I have been off of sugar for over a year. I started the keto diet in October of 2020, and I had planned poorly for my dietary needs on this retreat. Basically, I had brought a bunch of Quest bars, a bunch of protein bars, and not much else. So in the middle of this particular nowhere, there's exactly one tiny grocery store and a Chinese restaurant. So my first night, I got some sugar-filled Chinese takeout and didn't find much of anything keto-friendly in the small grocery store. So the next day, I started off with my host's delicious sugar-filled muffin. And then I spent the next few hours curled up on the bed crying because I felt awful. All that sugar that I had not had in a year, and my body's like, what is this poison? And I seriously considered just packing up and coming home. And a voice inside my head said, nope, you booked this trip because you said you were burned out. Now just drive your butt to Bamberg, get a Subway salad, hit the Piggly Wiggly for some supplies, and quit whining. And I did as the voice directed and found the rest of my stay to be really pleasant, actually. But did it cure my burnout? No. Didn't even touch it. I came back just as stressed and exhausted as I had been when I left. Maybe even more so because of all the sugar and bugs. I am happy to report, however, that my burnout has since disappeared.
Yay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm very happy about that. And it's not because I took a break from my duties here or at any other job, but I realized the source of my burnout. Anybody want to guess? Keith. Right.
Expectations.
Expectations.
No.
Keith is the source of my burnout. Expectations, that's close. My ego. In fact, I think this whole burnout epidemic, the so-called Great Resignation and all the house swapping and other life changes that we're all making during this pandemic, it's actually a great awakening to the deceptions of the ego. Here's my controversial statement of the day. We are all feeling burned out because our ego isn't getting its way. It is, it's right. Because the ego convinces you that you're not happy. It says this job isn't fulfilling. This relationship isn't what you want. Where you're living, this house, you want a different one. You want a bigger one. You want a nicer one.
Smaller one.
Or a smaller one, yeah.
Or even a one.
or even one.
Just one that's self-cleaning.
Right, one that's self-cleaning, absolutely. So when I saw how my ego was pulling at me, trying to convince me that I was burned out on Jubilee and how much work it's going to take to rebuild, even to where we were when the pandemic began, I finally did what I always do when I reach the end of my rope and feel burned out, what I should have done all along. I just went back to Spirit and I said, what is it that you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And I don't know why I pray this prayer anymore, because the Spirit's answer is always the same. Spirit always says, do your work. Do your work. And in the past, I have been completely exasperated by this answer. My ego sees it as some kind of quid pro quo, right? If I do my work, then there's a reward. If I do my work, I'll get a bigger congregation. I'll get more money. I'll get more prestige, maybe even some fame. Yeah, okay, do the work. This time, though, it was different. When I heard Spirit say, do your work, I was relieved. I said, really? That's exactly it? That's all I got to do? For the first time, I understood what A Course in Miracles tells us this morning. Everything is for your own best interests. The feelings of burnout, the feelings of resentment for having to start all over again and rebuild our community, the drive to get away and experience an absurd, although ultimately edifying retreat. They all make sense this time around. Falling for the ego's trick, that was in my own best interest because it finally resulted in a miracle. I got a new perspective. And I realized, as the Course says, that I was perceiving the world through my ego's goals, which has nothing to do with my own best interest because the ego is not me. When I believe the ego is me, especially when it tempts me to stop doing the work that the Holy has given to me, like Jubilee Circle, that's the moment I am led astray. That's the moment I misuse my purpose, which is simply to do the work that has been given to me to do. It is crucial to your learning, A Course says, to be willing to give up the goals you have established for everything. And that jubilance is the sentence that made my burnout disappear. It is crucial to your learning to be willing to give up the goals you, that ego you, has established. Everything. A Course tells us we don't even know what's in our own best interest. That's why everything is in our own best interest, because everything we do or think or say is an opportunity to awaken to the truth of who we are. So I gave up. I gave up all the goals I think are important for Jubilee. And when I reflect on what those have been, they've all been ego-based. More people, more money, more prestige, more recognition. Who cares? If there are 5 people or 500 or 5,000 people in this room or watching online, who cares? Who cares? The attendance, the money, the growth, the outcomes, they are none of my business. That's not my job. My job. Do your work. Take care of business, whatever is laid before me to do. I am called to do my best with what I have been tasked to do. Jubilee is my task. This is my business. And as long as I do what is assigned to me within this business, Spirit does the rest. Not magically, of course, but Spirit will move people and things and resources and ideas and whatever else is needed. Spirit will move all of that into place for Jubilee to accomplish whatever it is that Jubilee is called to do. And I guarantee this, if we will all just do our work, whatever it is that has been laid before us to do, and let Spirit handle the outcome, it will all work out perfectly, even, and maybe especially, if it is not our ego's vision of success. I dare say the perfect outcome is the one that makes the ego feel the most burned out and the most unfulfilled. That's when you know it's a perfect one. Our calling, not just for Jubilee, but for every aspect of our lives, is simply to do the work that is put before us. The refrain of the ego, according to a course, is always seek but do not find. Because the ego will put you on the treadmill. This is the goal, and then that's the goal, and no, this is a better goal. But the holy is always just telling us to take care of its business every day and in every way. And that's how you build a best spiritual, loving life. Breathe deeply. Now, the truth of the matter is, Jubilants, we are all self-employed. We're employed by that capital S self. That is the seat of our higher divinity. The sooner we realize that, the sooner we will ditch our ego as our career guide and turn it all over to Spirit. And when I say the answer that I hear when I ask what my purpose is during this short lifetime is always do your work, it's easy to get caught up in the ego's reactionary protest because your ego convinces you you need a purpose in this life. What is my purpose? Everybody asks. And preferably that purpose is something grand, like becoming famous or a millionaire, writing a great American novel, curing cancer. I mean, we can't just be here to toil away in obscurity, right? But isn't that what the vast majority of people do with their time here? We don't all get famous. Why do we need to ruin it by pursuing the ego's ridiculous notion of fame and fortune in this illusory world? Especially when we know that the ego's motto is seek but do not find. You could get all the fame and fortune in the world, but the ego is still never satisfied. It always will want more. That's why we need to allow Spirit to be our career coach, because it knows everything is in our own best interest. And it can use situations that seem ridiculous or tedious or makes the ego feel burned out or exhausted as a chance to work miracles in our lives. Take the Karate Kid, for example. I know I'm dating myself with this aged movie, but in the movie, The Karate Kid, Daniel wants to learn how to fight because he's being bullied, so he finds this gentle and wise teacher, Mr. Miyagi, and he convinces the old man to teach him not just how to keep from getting hurt, but how to fight back. And Miyagi immediately begins Daniel's training by having him paint his fence and wax his car. And he shows him the very specific techniques of painting the fence, right? And wax on, wax off. No, we all know all that. And Daniel, of course, is understandably upset. He wants to learn how to fight, not become free labor for this old man. For a while, though, Daniel does what he's told. He does the work that Miyagi gives him until he can't stand it anymore, and his ego tells him this is crap, and he quits. And of course, the first time a challenge comes up in his life, the bullies are out to get him, and when he's pressed into fighting, he finds out that all that seemingly tedious work that he has been doing has taught him the moves he needs right at the right time. Paint the fence, apparently, and wax on, wax off are highly effective movements when your enemies are coming at you. And this exactly is how spiritual growth works, Jubilants. We can do practices such as meditation, chanting, yoga, reading spiritual books, gaining intellectual knowledge of spirituality. But when the challenge comes, that's when we learn that doing work that doesn't seem all that spiritual is actually how we grow our spiritual skills. Spiritual growth happens while we're doing the things that don't seem very spiritual, like our everyday jobs. Because this is where we put into practice our wax on and wax off and painting the fence. Author and teacher Michael Singer talks in depth about how doing your work, whatever it is that has been given to you by life to do, is your best vehicle for spiritual growth. Instead of grumbling that perhaps our day-to-day work feels pointless or repetitive or not even that fulfilling, Singer says to do it joyfully, do it diligently with a sense of excellence and purpose. Indeed, doing our work, no matter what it is or how our ego feels about it, it is our purpose because it is our vehicle for spiritual growth and awakening. When we commit to do the work before us, no matter what it is, Singer says the ego will begin to drop away because you're not listening to it yammer on anymore about how bored it is or frustrated or burned out it is. When you put your heart into your work, Singer says, without thinking about a reward, without thinking about, is this going to work? Will it fail? You grow in spirit and you allow the process to take place. I assure you, Singer says, that God will do the rest at a level you would never dream, so don't look back, don't stop, just bury your being into what life has given you to do. Don't worry about money, don't worry about relationships, don't worry about age, don't worry about anything. Just be willing to put your whole being into what was given for you to do, and you will grow tremendously. But oh, how the ego fights back. It resists this ridiculous notion. What about money? What about success? What about making my dreams come true? Manifesting what I want in the world? Again, I invite you to take a moment and examine whose dreams you're pursuing. The ego always dreams of fame. It always dreams of fortune or accolades, some manner of reward, and it will convince you that that is your desire as well. And it's time to question those desires and those thoughts. Is that really what you want? Remember, a course says when we identify with the ego's goals, we tend to misuse our lives. We pursue things outside of ourselves that we think will make us happy. The job, the relationship, the house. Now, if you're in a truly toxic job or a truly toxic relationship or there is asbestos in your house, I do recommend a change. However, if you're willing and aware in this situation, I guarantee the next thing Spirit gives you to do will be apparent and much more fulfilling. And I speak from experience because I spent nearly 2 decades as a journalist. I landed at the last 6 years I spent in journalism, I spent at the pinnacle of anybody's journalism career. I was a reporter and a writer at CNN. But I began to suffer from the toxic atmosphere that at that time was really starting to emerge in that profession and has almost completely overwhelmed it. But I knew I had to leave. I never imagined leaving journalism. I loved it so much. But the moment I became willing and aware that I needed to change, another job appeared. It was like, well, here's another job that you could do. And I got that job. And within a year, that job too became toxic. So I just repeated the exercise. I became willing to change, to become aware of how Spirit might move. And the next job brought me to South Carolina. And that job was my Barbie dream job at the University of South Carolina. It was filled with supportive and caring colleagues, and it eventually led me to this spot right here. I'm here today, Jubilants, because I repeatedly followed Spirit's guidance to do your work. Over the past 12 years that Jubilee has existed, my spiritual growth has exploded just because I kept doing that. It's not because of the books I read or the spiritual practices I did or the meditations. Those helped, of course, but it happened because I did my work, even when it felt pointless, even when it felt overwhelming, even when it felt like it wouldn't come to anything. But if my ego could convince me to quit, then I wouldn't be here talking to you this morning, trying to help you understand your purpose. So, Jubilants, I invite you. No, I'm begging you. Do your work. Whatever it is before you, take care of business without one single thought about whether the world thinks it's worthy, about whether its outcome will be a success, or if it will fulfill you or give you a sense of purpose. Your purpose is to do the work, because that's what Spirit has assigned you for your ultimate growth and awakening. And I understand your resistance to that kind of a message, because I have those feelings myself. This is why I included the reading from Stephen Pressfield this morning. We all have an urge upward. We all want to climb. That's why we want to have a purpose. We all want to climb that tree of enlightenment, to reach the ultimate awakening. But that ego is our resistance. It's that pain-in-the-ass school teacher who keeps us grounded in its reality of false safety and makes us scared to climb. But jubilants, we are made to climb, to find love in our work and love in the sharing of our work with others. That mischievous tree-climbing scamp is our friend, Pressfield writes. She's us. She's our higher nature, our self, with a capital S. In the face of resistance, we have to remember her and hang on to her and draw strength from her. Jubilants, we are all higher self-employed. And there's plenty of work for each of us to do in this world. So I invite you this morning, if you are tempted to quit anything in the midst of this pandemic, quit your ego. Stop taking orders from that pain-in-the-ass school teacher that won't let you climb to your highest spiritual self. We are called to climb. We are called to work overtime and take care of that Holy Spirit business of love. Oh, yeah.